First of all, I'd like to thank Leader Associates for organising today's event and bringing together such a broad and experienced range of speakers. Effective collaboration is essential to achieving our energy transition goals, so events like this play an important role in aligning global efforts. I'm sorry I can't be with you joining you live, but I'm glad that I'm still able to take part. The shift to clean energy represents an enormous global challenge and an opportunity for Australia to step up to ensure the future energy security of our trading partners in Asia, while ensuring our own future prosperity and economic resilience. The maritime sector will be particularly difficult to abate. In July 2023, the International Maritime Organization, IMO, the United Nations regulatory body for shipping, adopted a revised greenhouse gas strategy which aims for international shipping to reach zero emissions by or close to 2050 to align the industry with the objectives of the Paris Climate Agreement. The question now is, how do we get there? Like much of the decarbonisation agenda, no country can do it alone. Collaboration and partnership will be crucial, and Australia and Singapore are well placed to lead the way and provide a model for others to follow. First, let me provide an overview of Australia's efforts to drive innovation and investment in future fuels before speaking to the pathfinding Singapore-Australia Green Economy Agreement and our latest initiative to develop a green and digital shipping corridor. Australia wants to position itself as a renewable energy superpower. We know global capital is shifting ever more rapidly towards clean energy and net zero aligned projects. The IEA forecasts that global investment in clean energy is on course to rise to $1.7 trillion this year, with investment in solar set to eclipse oil production for the first time. Innovation and investment are driving towards a new era of low-cost renewable energy that can improve competitiveness for traditional and emerging industries. World markets are increasingly demanding low-emission energy and materials. Australia's abundant sun, wind and large landmass give us a unique advantage in generating clean power more cheaply than other nations. Sound and consistent energy policy is crucial to ensuring that the transition is responsibly managed, bringing new resources of renewable energy and technology into the mix while ensuring reliable, affordable power for households and businesses. The Australian Government has implemented important changes to Australia's energy and climate policy settings over the past 12 months to address key challenges, responding to high energy prices and seeking an ambitious 2030 emissions reduction and 2050 net zero set of targets. In the last year, the Australian Government joined many other nations which have increased their emissions reduction targets, committing to a 43% reduction on 2005 levels by 2030, and we have reaffirmed our commitment to reach net zero emissions by 2050. Australia's clean energy transition is crucial for reducing our emissions to meet our ambitious targets and to address climate change. Our transition will need to be at a fast but steady pace, and there are many opportunities to cooperate on developing clean energy industries where hydrogen will play a key role. Clean hydrogen, produced with a minimal carbon footprint, is well positioned to play a key role in our decarbonisation goals, and Australia is well positioned to be a leader in the global hydrogen industry, and this is something people here in Singapore are very interested in. We are already seeing that global demand for renewable hydrogen is growing rapidly and is projected to reach around 500 million tonnes per year by 2050. Australia has an estimated $300 billion Australian pipeline of proposed hydrogen projects, over 100 projects in clean hydrogen, ammonia and green methanol, accounting for 40% of all announced hydrogen projects globally. Australian governments at both state and federal levels have provided about 40 billion Australian dollars in funding support to seed the Australian hydrogen industry. The Australian Federal Government in Canberra has committed over 4 billion Australian dollars to support the development of a clean hydrogen industry, including through the new $2 billion Hydrogen Head Start program, which opened for expressions of interest in October 2023. Hydrogen Head Start bridges the commercial gap projects, putting renewable hydrogen on a path to scale and supporting future export and manufacturing opportunities. The government has invested over $500 million for hydrogen hubs in regional Australia and more than $38 million to develop a Guarantee of Origin scheme to certify clean hydrogen projects. It is also currently reviewing policy options to reduce carbon leakage, including an Australian carbon border adjustment mechanism, in particular for hard-to-abate industries such as steel and cement. But of course, reducing our own emissions will not be enough. Australia will need to work with our partners to support global efforts to reduce emissions and support stable and reliable clean energy markets. This is exactly what we are doing with Singapore through our Green Economy Agreement. Australia and Singapore have a strong and vibrant relationship. Australia was the second country to recognise Singapore when it became independent in 1965. In 2015, Australia and Singapore established a Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, CSP, which encompasses all aspects of our relationship, including trade, defence, science and innovation, education and the arts, digital economy and green economy. Singapore is Australia's largest two-way trading partner and investor in Southeast Asia. Singapore-Australia Free Trade Agreement, SAFTA, which was signed in 2003, was updated in 2015. Australia, like Singapore, has set ambitious targets and goals for decarbonising its economy and reducing its greenhouse gas emissions. As a major supplier of LNG to Singapore, Australia has been a long-standing energy partner. As we transition our economies to net zero, we will continue to work closely with our partners like Singapore to ensure regional energy security. We also want to reach our ambitious targets and continue to lead in the implementation of these goals. This will mean a fundamental change in the composition and dynamics of our trade and investment relationship as our economies transition to low and zero emissions energy sources. Oil and gas will need to be transitioned to clean transportable fuels like ammonia and hydrogen. This transition will come with costs, but will also create opportunities. Australia and Singaporean businesses are already taking advantage of these opportunities. Innovative companies like Australia's Hysata, which has developed the world's most efficient electrolysers, and Singapore's Keppel, which is involved in a range of Australian clean energy projects, are at the forefront of the energy transition. Just over a year ago, on the 18th of October 2022, the Australian and Singaporean governments signed the Singapore-Australia Green Economy Agreement, the GEA. The GEA lays the foundations for greater collaboration between our two countries to drive growth while reducing emissions. It's a new type of agreement which combines trade, economic and climate objectives by promoting deeper collaboration between our governments and business communities, and it seeks to boost trade and create business opportunities and decarbonise key industrial sectors. Under the GEA, Australia and Singapore are promoting trade in environmental goods and services. We are fostering business collaboration, including through a Go Green Co-Innovation Grants program to encourage Australian and Singapore SMEs to work together to foster green innovations. We are promoting sustainable finance and green investment. We're sharing insights into policies and programs that build green skills and a green workforce, and we are increasing the compatibility of standards to facilitate trade. The GEA builds on the excellent cooperation that's been established between Australia's Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, CSIRO, and its equivalent, the Singaporean A*STAR, and the Maritime and Ports Authority of Singapore. One of the key challenges the GEA seeks to tackle is maritime decarbonisation. Accounting for over 90% of global trade volume, the maritime sector is regarded as the global economy's backbone. Shipping remains, in most cases, the most efficient and cost-effective way to carry goods long distances, but it also accounts for approximately 1/4 of all emissions from the global transport sector and around 3% of total global emissions overall, emitting nearly 1 billion tonnes of CO2 per year. If the international shipping sector were a country, it would be the 6th or 7th largest CO2 emitter, comparable to Germany. The shipping industry faces intense pressure to decarbonise in the coming decades. As I noted earlier, in July this year, the IMO agreed to zero emissions by or close to 2050 to align the industry with the objectives of the Paris Climate Agreement. But cutting the emissions of such a complex industry is no simple task. To reach the IMO targets and beyond, a multifaceted approach is needed. Maximising energy efficiency will be important. Renewable energy, such as wind and solar, will also be key. So too will the development of new technologies and the leveraging of hydrogen and hydrogen derivatives, particularly ammonia and methanol, to be used as bunker fuels. The International Renewable Energy Agency estimates renewable ammonia could represent as much as 43% of shipping fuel by 2050. Despite private and public interest in decarbonisation, international shipping currently uses virtually no low-carbon fuels, instead relying on carbon-dense bunker fuel. To reach the IMO goals, industry leaders say that the first net zero ships must enter the global fleet by 2030. Therefore, it's imperative to explore low-carbon fuel alternatives now to prepare for the impending energy transition in coming decades. Powering vessels is one element, but there is a much broader range of elements that will need to be decarbonised in the maritime sector. For example, ports are the hub where land and sea join, meaning many industries intersect. Replacing all port and harbour activities with renewable energies would have a massive impact on carbon emissions in the maritime sector. This complex and difficult task will require key industry players and governments to cooperate. Singapore is, of course, a key country in this agenda. Singapore is a global hub port, linked to 600 ports in 120 countries and attracting 130,000 vessel calls on average each year. With this depth of activity, it's no wonder Singapore has made itself the world's largest fuel bunkering hub. It is a global ports epicentre. Singapore's strategic location, long trading history and strong connections into Asian markets have long made it an attractive place for maritime companies and businesses. This is one of Singapore's key strengths, its ability to bring together a wide array of stakeholders to work together on a maritime decarbonisation agenda. For example, there is important work being done by Singapore's Global Centre for Maritime Decarbonisation, GCMD, which is working with Australian partners, including industry partners, on groundbreaking research into ammonia bunkering and safe management of ammonia in shipping. Australia is proud to be working with Singapore through the GEA and other instruments to leverage our complementary strengths on the maritime decarbonisation agenda. When Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese met with Singapore's Acting Prime Minister Lawrence Wong in June this year, they announced an initiative under the GEA to establish a green and digital shipping corridor by 2025. Our Green Shipping Corporation seeks to establish government, business and research partnerships to explore decarbonisation of operations at sea and at ports, assessment of shipping routes, alternative fuel use and bunkering, and infrastructure requirements. As we establish this green and digital shipping corridor, we will seek to pilot and trial the use of low-emission shipping fuels and bunkering facilities. This is an ambitious frontier of cooperation, but we are confident both Australia and Singapore can offer the complementary strengths needed to make meaningful progress on maritime decarbonisation. Australia is an island continent with a long history of shipping and port operations. We're also committed to harnessing Australia's vast solar and wind resources to continue our role as an energy security partner for this region. This aligns perfectly with Singapore's strength as a global maritime hub with an ambitious and innovative decarbonisation agenda. We admire Singapore's ambition and its implementation of its climate goals through work, including by the Maritime and Ports Authority, on hydrogen and hydrogen-based fuels like ammonia. We welcome the investment from Singaporean companies like Keppel and the collaborative work that is already going on between our private sectors. We see the GEA as a landmark agreement that we hope will form a model for the kind of comprehensive cooperation agreements that the world will need to address the enormous challenge of the energy transition. Wouldn't it be fantastic and fitting if the first offtake agreements for Australian green hydrogen-based fuels were with Singapore? Thank you for your attention.